Good afternoon. I hope everyone is doing well. I'm Diana Hernandez, Program Director of the Monuments Toolkit at World Heritage USA. Today's conversation is part of our ongoing series on cultural heritage, community memory, and the landscapes that hold our history. On this Juneteenth, we are especially honored to gather for a conversation that is both timely and timeless. Today we have two extraordinary voices joining us, and I want to give each of them the introduction they deserve. First up is Dr. John Lundberg, who is a historian. His work centers on Reconstruction, the period following the Civil War, when the U.S. made its most serious attempt to fulfill the promise of emancipation, and when the forces determined to reverse that promise organized to stop it. His scholarship asks us to reckon with what was built during Reconstruction, what was deliberately destroyed, and what we are still trying to recover. Welcome, John.
Thank you.
Samuel Collins III is a seventh generation Texan whose family roots in this land go back to 1837. He's a public historian, community activist, financial consultant, associate minister, and around Galveston, he's simply known as Professor Juneteenth. For more than 20 years, Sam has devoted himself to one mission: ensuring that the story of Juneteenth, the day Union soldiers arrived in Galveston and announced that 250,000 enslaved Texans were free, is told fully, truthfully, and in the places where it actually happened. He organized historical markers, murals, statues, and public exhibits across Galveston. He co-chaired the Juneteenth mural committee that produced the stunning Absolute Equality mural at the Naya Cultural Center. He worked alongside Opal Lee and the National Juneteenth Observance Foundation to make Juneteenth a federal holiday. He sits on the board of advisors of the National Trust for Historic Preservation, and he is now building toward a Galveston International Juneteenth Museum that would make this port city the definitive home of Juneteenth's legacy. Sam, welcome.
Thank you.
Before we begin our conversation, I'd like to give each of our speakers a few minutes to share a window into their work. We will start with Dr. Lundberg and then move on to Sam. The floor is now yours.
Okay, thank you. I hope y'all can hear me okay. My my book, The Texas Lowcountry, came out in 2024, and it was the result of, I don't know, 15 years of research and writing, but it focuses on the experiences of the enslaved, and the enslaved in the heavy plantation country south west of Houston, what is now Fort Bend, Matagorda, Wharton, and Brazoria counties. And what I discovered is that, of course, in 1860, 70% of the population in those counties was enslaved. And uh, the slavery there was particularly brutal because of the growing of sugar, as well as cotton, and it more closely resembled the Louisiana sugar parishes or the South Carolina Low Country than anything else you find in Texas, and so that's why I've called it the Texas Low Country. And of course, the front door to the Texas Low Country, so to speak, was Galveston. Galveston was the main port, and then Houston served as a market, if you will, to people would things would come into Galveston by ship, and then they would take them by steam, pack it up to Houston, and so there was a lot of buying and selling of enslaved people in Galveston and Houston, bound for those plantations down there in the Brazos and Colorado River bottoms. And as a result, Reconstruction down there is fascinating. I the scope of my book, I took it all the way from the beginning of Austin's Anglo colony in 1822, all the way through to the last gasp of Reconstruction in 1895. And you're probably asking yourself, 1895, it seems awfully late for Reconstruction. Well, because Republican county governments, biracial Republican county governments held control over those counties because of the voting population and the composition of the population. Those Republican machines stayed in power long after Reconstruction traditionally ended, and it was not until 1895 that Nathan Holler, the last black man to represent the next to last black legislator until Barbara Jordan in 1966, that he left the Texas legislature. And it was only after Brazoria County white men in Brazoria County forcefully established a white man's union association through violence. There was a coup, an actual armed coup. They stationed snipers around the courthouse to make sure that no one could interfere with them seizing power in the county. And then, of course, Nathan Holler had no other way to get on the ballot, and so no way to get reelected to the state legislature. But there were so many amazing things that came out of Reconstruction. There was a lot of violence, of course, but probably 20 to 30% of formerly enslaved freed people ended up owning their own land in that region by the end of Reconstruction. There were court cases where formerly enslaved women sued for right to the estates of their enslavers on the basis that they were common law spouses included in the will, all sorts of cases like that. So it was really amazing to see the way that black women in particular used the courts during the Reconstruction era. And, you know, there were Fort Bend County elected the first black sheriff in the history of the United States in 1869. I'd like to see more put up to him. Benjamin Williams, who was a representative in the legislature, he came in third for the balloting for Speaker of the House when he was in the legislature. And they all helped to pass legislation that helped create the Texas Agricultural and Mechanical College, Texas Agricultural Mechanical College for Negroes, which is now, of course, Prairie View A&M. And so some really incredible accomplishments that they made in the legislature. I am so sorry, but my memory is failing me at the moment. Of course, it's going to give out right now when I need it the most. But the man I was thinking of was Walter Moses Burton, who was the sheriff of Fort Bend County. And, up until 2020 or 2021, Fort Bend County still had the monument up next to the courthouse of the Jaybird Association, which was the White Man's Union Association in Fort Bend County. And they finally took that down and put it in the cemetery there in Richmond, where it belongs, if not being torn down altogether. And, I would love to see a statue or go up to Walter Burton. He served the county incredibly well as a sheriff, and then later as a member of the Texas legislature. So, I mean, that's just one of the things that strikes me. And I think there are just a lot of misconceptions out there about Juneteenth, about freedom. enslaved people did not learn about the Emancipation Proclamation from Juneteenth. They knew through the grapevine, through word of mouth. Juneteenth was simply the first day that they could enforce it, that they could openly celebrate it. And of course, they did, and we still do today. And that was because United States troops showed up in Galveston to begin occupation of Texas after the Civil War under General Gordon Granger. Um, and, you know, Granger never publicly issued General Orders Number 3. He never issued. I mean, he never stood on the balcony at Rip and issued this proclamation. He wrote it down and circulated it through his officers, and of course, then it got out to the people in Galveston the same day. And so, there's a lot of misconceptions about that. And it wasn't until around Christmas 1865, when Freedmen's Bureau agents first started visiting a lot of the plantations in the interior, that enslaved people were able to assert their freedom, to celebrate their freedom, and actually walk away for the first time. So it wasn't until 6 months after Juneteenth in the interior, and longer than that in other parts of Texas. We have accounts of people still being held in bondage as late as 1866. And so the idea that this was sort of a sudden thing or an absolute thing to begin with, instead of the beginning of a process, I think is one of the misconceptions. And uh, I think Gordon Granger gets far too much credit for what yes, he issued the orders, but if you read General Order Number 3, it's very, very conservative, very hesitant, and he warns the freed people to quietly stay at home. And so this is not a radical document. He's simply announcing that the Emancipation Proclamation is now in force. So those are just a few of the things from my research. And one of the things I found is that, people ask me, well, how do you find the piece together the stories of enslaved people? Well, county documents, deeds, probates, wills, court cases, and you have to read against the grain, and you have to try to figure out what's going on, when often all you have is the enslaver's perspective. And so you have to then put together what's going on from the perspective of enslaved people through those court documents. Because in Texas, we're pretty crazy about private property. We value it more than human life, and so all those deed records they're all available to the public, and all the way back to the beginning of the Republic of Texas and beyond, with the Spanish records. And they record all sorts of things that lots of people in Texas would rather ignore, but that are right there in the records if you look, and if you have the persistence, and if you really want to know the perspective and what the lives of people, enslaved people and then freed people, were like in that time period. So that's really all I have. Uh,
Thank you, Dr. Lundberg. And now we will hear from Sam.
As he was speaking, on the other side of the coin is the oral history of the families. So, as was stated, I'm seventh generation Texan with roots back to 1837. Growing up in Hitchcock, Texas, born in Galveston on the island, so I'm BOI. But I want everyone to understand that you can relax. You too are BOI, born off island. So the locals like to use the term for born on the island, but to bring everybody together and no division, you could be born off island or born on island. But the oral history passed down from my maternal grandmother, she used to often say her aunt Henrietta had high cheekbones, and she had a lot of African in her. And it wasn't until I became an adult and I was doing research on the family, and my maternal grandmother's maternal grandfather, who was Aunt Henrietta's brother, uh, I found in the records him and the family in the census records. And then I found his parents and back to the first native born or Texan born Martha Thompson in 1840, on some census records, 1842, and others when Texas was an independent nation. But in that recording, it had her parents were both born on the continent of Africa. Her husband, Joseph Thompson, in the 1867 record. So the power of primary sources, to Dr. Lundberg's point, is undeniable. It's not our opinion, it's not our feelings, it's the records and how those records are interpreted and how the story is told. So my work as a public historian and certified tourism ambassador in Galveston, just a lifelong student of wanting to learn more, is to expand the narrative, to tell more stories. So when we think about the iconography of what we memorialize all over the country, it's a very narrow window. So if you imagine in your home or your parents' or grandparents' home, if you walked in and saw photos of everybody in the family except yours, how would you feel not having your picture up? Now, some people feel like they don't take good pictures, so they wouldn't want it. But the majority of us feel that we would want our graduation picture on the wall. We would want our baby pictures in the photo album. We would want our recital pictures, our football pictures, our soccer pictures, whatever events that you're involved in, or just everyday life. So, what we're doing by adding murals like the Juneteenth mural in Galveston is putting more pictures up on the wall. Now, I understand some feel we should go through and rip pictures off the wall. That's one perspective. But when you start ripping pictures off the wall, you're going to make those individuals upset. So if we could find a spot and add another picture to tell more of the story and complete the story, I think we could share more of our history. So these individuals that he did his research about, my family was right there in those numbers. Joseph Thompson, when he registered to vote in August 1st, 1867, I think it was August 1st or August 3rd, he mentions that he had been in Brazoria 30 years. And at the time, he was 32 years old and 67. So that means he came to Brazoria as a 2-year-old enslaved child in 1837. That's how I get to that number. I also have additional family history in Austin County on my father's side of the family. What I'm talking about now is on my mother's side of the family. But from Joseph Thompson, my fourth great grandfather, and Martha Thompson, my fourth great grandmother, one of them, you see these individuals that came into Brazoria County. Uh, there in Brazoria County, they have Africa Landing, where many Africans were brought in illegally after 1808. When we think about what we choose to remember, many of you that are familiar with Houston probably have driven down Fannin Street. So when we think about James Fannin, uh, after he got killed, he had a wife and two daughters. His wife died. His two daughters died without having children. So there are no descendants, but he owned 39 human beings. From those 39 human beings, one set of parents, uh, Demidou and Chaco, they had children, the Johnson family. And one of their children, one of their sons, Solomon Johnson, was born in 1843. So after he di- after Fannin dies, his business partner Joseph Mims takes his property. Mims dies in 1845, and in his inventory there is Solomon listed as uh, 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 1.5 years old, and valued at $50. And the reason I'm bringing this up is because Solomon Johnson has a granddaughter, Miss Carrie Thomas, that is 105 years old, still living in Brazoria. So here's an individual only two generations from enslavement, still living in Brazoria at 105 in the Mims community. She'll be at the Juneteenth celebration tomorrow. We're going to give her a special award, but she's keeping the 19th of June celebration alive. When I interviewed her for a documentary I'm doing Juneteenth in the country, she said, I really wish that I could give a scholarship to a young person around here. And I offered $500. And I was so moved by her willingness to keep trying to invest in the education of young people. Tomorrow, I'm going to add another $500 to that. But these are the people that have kept the oral history and the story of Juneteenth going for decades, long before it was on the calendar, long before anyone said it was an official national holiday. And as we expand the narrative and tell more stories, we are helping to complete this history. You can put the image up so that I can just show individuals the mural downtown in Galveston. And this is on the southwest corner of 22nd and Strand, one of the most historic corners in Galveston, in Texas, because this is where the Juneteenth story began, where Granger's headquarters was located in the Osterman building. And one of the things you will notice is the presence of the United States colored troops throughout this mural. They were the majority of Union soldiers that came into Galveston in Texas. And by January of 1866, military records report General Sheridan said he had 6,500 white soldiers in Texas, 19,768 black soldiers. That is a 3-to-1 ratio. 75% of the Union forces by January of 66 in the state of Texas to enforce law and order with weapons and authority to use them were the United States colored troops. So, as Dr. Lundberg has said, Granger gets a lot of credit, but he didn't even write General Order Number 3. It was written by an officer under his command, Major Frederick Emory. And it is Emory who included the language in the second sentence. This involves an absolute equality. So the title of the mural is Absolute Equality for that reason. The bottom line is we want absolute equality. Absolute equality does not mean everyone gets equal results, but it means that every human being has an equal opportunity to grow and develop into the very best version of him or herself without hurdles or barriers hindering that growth or development. So I'm looking forward to our conversation today. Again, I am Samuel Collins, the third, seventh generation Texan, not 17. When she said 17, I said, that's a new history on me. I got to go back 10 more generations and find out who I'm related to. But I'm looking forward to this wonderful conversation. We can go through the mural at a later point. The mural was completed by a group of artists. We also have their photo in 2021. So we're celebrating 5 years of Juneteenth being a national holiday. This is a team of artists: Samson Adenuba, Cherry Meekins, Joshua Bennett, Reginald Adams, Kadavian Baylor, and Dantrell Boone. And I do want to mention that this would not have been possible if not for those that control the assets and resources that help make it possible. So that building was owned by Mitchell Historic Properties. If not for Sheridan Mitchell Lorenz, uh, uh, funding the project, seed funding it, getting it off the ground, and then helping us to raise over $400,000 to do the mural and community programming, we would not be able to have this. So we want to thank Mitchell Historic Properties for allowing us to get the mural done and for helping to seed fund it. And let's dive into this conversation and talk about Juneteenth and the importance of this Texas holiday that became a national holiday and a worldwide celebration of freedom.
Thank you to both of you. I did correct myself. I don't know if you heard me, but I did
Yeah, I did. I
correct
did.
myself to seventh. Um, Thank you both for those introductions into your work. And I wanted to start with um, just a general question about what Juneteenth means to each of you personally, not just historically, but as a lived experience. You know, that sense of Juneteenth as something alive, something still being fought over. I think that runs through everything both of you do, and I think uh, the audience would love to hear your perspective on it.
Sam, you wanna go first?
Oh yeah, I Juneteenth has been so important to our family. I mean, we celebrate since I was a child. Of course, it's grown and been more commercialized now. But for me, Juneteenth celebrates the evolution of our country to a more perfect union. We were not perfect in 1528, which is when the first non-native enslaved person arrived in Texas, not 1619, a date that is used on the East Coast with the transatlantic slave trade. We were not perfect in 1619, 1776, 1865, or even today, but I would hope that we will move forward to a more perfect union. Things were not ideal, but when people talk about freedom was an instant on June 19th, 1865, I often bring up to them that the United States of America was not a country on July 4th, 1776. They actually voted on July 2nd, right? They signed it on July 4th. They had to fight an American Revolution and win. Because if they had not won the American Revolution, it would have been like the Civil War, in which the South lost and the Confederate States of America went away in the sense as an individual country. So if the colonists had lost the American Revolution, they would have still been under British control. But because they won, they eventually established a constitution. So this journey of freedom with Juneteenth, yes, it took some time, and even the territories of indigenous people that had enslaved people, there were five treaties signed on June 14th, 1866. So this evolution of freedom, this journey of freedom, this American experiment continues today because we're still dealing with situations where we do not have absolute equality in our society.
Thank you. Yeah, I completely agree with everything you said. The For me, Juneteenth represents. So I'm also a seventh generation Texan. My mother's family's been in East Texas since 1840. Um, first of all, it's an honor to meet you as a descendant of one of the people that Jim Fannin smuggled in illegally in 1836. It was a real yeah, that was bad. I mean, that was there was a lot of that going on, and Jim Fannin happened to be one of the more prominent players. And there were I've written a small piece on a woman named Fatima Van, who she and her husband Odo were also smuggled in by Fannin from Havana on that same cruise and or that same ship, and the Shenandoah in and they were at African landing as well. They ended up in Matagorda County and owning land and founding a small settlement there, which is still known as VAN in Texas. It's a census designated place. But yeah, the Fannin, the people that he brought on that trip from Cuba, predominantly children and small children. And it's because, well, for a variety of economic reasons, I suppose. But it was terrifying, and uh, most likely those are people that came from the collapsing Yoruba Empire and were captured and sold into slavery and shipped out through Lagos and then to Havana. and then to straight up the San Bernard River to African Landing. What Juneteenth means to me is that I love Texas in spite of everything. I love the United States. I love the Constitution, but as it currently stands. But for me, Juneteenth, you can't understand anything about this country without understanding the experiences of people of the African diaspora. You just can't. There's a huge missing piece there. And Juneteenth represents, in my mind, and has always represented a huge step forward in which we can all celebrate Texas becoming more inclusive, more free. And though we may take steps backward, certainly it seems like right now in this country we're taking steps backward. We still have those holidays. We still have those oral traditions. We still have those records, and you can't erase that. And Juneteenth, I think, is an opportunity to celebrate. Look, y'all means all. You know, if you're in Texas and you're not representing everyone's story through public history, through academic history, in every way possible, it diminishes all of us. And it leaves gaping holes in the narrative. And the problem is that when people are observe those holes in the narrative, they then start ascribing false causes to outcomes they see around them. And if we only understood the context, the story, and that mural is absolutely fantastic. Absolute freedom is, I mean, couldn't be a better message, I think, and a better place to put it either. And Juneteenth is just it's freedom. This country has never lived up to its promises. But there are moments when we've tried and moments when we've gotten closer. And we may take 2 steps forward and 3 steps back sometimes. But to me, Juneteenth represents the beginning of at least the legal ending of the original sin of this country and of this state. And the recognition of the in many ways rotten foundation in terms of race and this creation of whiteness and the enslavement of indigenous people and people of African descent, and the financial and social foundation of this entire country. And so my family story has been told. It's been told 1,000 times in 1,000 different ways. I'm interested in telling everyone's story, and I am not gonna be satisfied or stop until every Texan feels the same way that I do, in that their story has an equal place in the narrative, if not greater. And that's the thing, is that you have to. We always view the past through the lens of the present. It's a necessary thing because we live in the present, and the past.
And I'd like to add to your commentary
Yeah.
that when we think about these families and those children that you talked about, and even the adults, Solomon was the first to buy property in his family, 235 acres eventually selling to his brother Pendleton and Jerry, also donating land for a church, Zion Temple AME Church, which is still in Mims community,
Mhm.
donating land for a school. When the schools integrated, it became the Mims Community Center. But they were philanthropic.
Yes.
They invested in their community. They had businesses. As they came out of slavery, they had skills. His dad was a blacksmith, Solomon's father. So uh, they we have deep roots here. Texas was 30% black in 1865, and today I think it's about 13%. Many people don't understand how immigration helped to shift the population percentages. When he was talking about the first sheriff in Fort Bend County and two senators, Matthew Gaines and George T. Ruby, were elected in 1869. There are new historical markers going up that were voted on a couple of years ago that are being placed all throughout the state right now. A new marker went up for Burton in Fort Bend County. I was there at that dedication. A new marker went up for George T. Ruby in Galveston. I was there for that dedication. I had to miss the Gaines marker dedication, but I later went back to visit the marker in the city of Burton. So these additional markers are going up, and unfortunately, uh, our fellow Texans and fellow American citizens have not been educated on the truth. So when they put a Matthew Gaines statue up at Texas A&M, people thought it was some woke agenda. But the students and former graduates had no idea, and many still do not realize that Gaines was pushing for the public land grant college along with other black legislators, and that's how Texas A&M was even formed. Without Gaines and Ruby and those black elected officials during Reconstruction, there wouldn't have been a push for public investment in education the way that it was. So, many people have no idea of the contributions, and when people say, I see some of the ignorant comments online. They just don't know the history. They've never been taught the history, and they're so close-minded to being open to new information that contradicts what they want to believe. I'm not a victim, and my family is not looking for any kind of handout. My children are eighth generation Texans with roots here. My oldest daughter, full scholarship to Howard. She has a master's degree from Full Sail. My second daughter, now I have to say this, my second daughter is a drug dealer. She's a pharmacist, so relax. She's a legal drug dealer, but she has a doctorate degree, Dr. Dallas Collins. My oldest son is an engineer, graduate from Texas A&M, which I am too. Whoop. But when I was a student at Texas A&M, I didn't know about the Reconstruction elected officials like Gaines and Ruby that had helped to establish the university, both Texas A&M and Prairie View. They don't get credit for that. I didn't know about the first sheriff elected in the country. These stories should inspire all of us. There are so many stories yet to be told, and I'm gonna shut up because I think John and I both can talk a long time. So we're gonna have to wait
Well,
for another question.
you're
No, it's
absolutely
okay.
you're absolutely
Actually,
right. You're absolutely
yeah,
correct.
that actually goes.
Uh,
It goes into my next question, actually, for both of you, on Reconstruction. So, how does Reconstruction history relate to place-based heritage? Where are the physical footprints of that era, and where can people go to actually experience it? Are there Reconstruction era sites that you think are undervisited, undermarked, or underinterpreted? Places where the story isn't being told as fully as it should be?
Yeah, very quickly, I'll jump in a couple of sentences. Dr. Andrea Roberts has this website, Texas Freedom Colonies, and you can go and see the many freedom colonies that were established after 1865. And, a lot of this history is hidden right in plain sight. I mean, I've driven through Brazoria County so many times and just didn't know. In Fort Bend County, also, I had passed that corner on the Strand numerous times before there was a Juneteenth marker there. didn't even know that that was the corner. Had gone with the myth of Granger standing on the balcony that romanticized the story. The narrative of people being gathered and news being shared is something that happened further inland, but not here in Galveston in that manner. So
Yeah, I mean, there are definitely sites that are undervalued. You know, you have the Freedom Tree in Missouri City, and that was on the Palmer Place, and we have the names of the people that were gathered underneath that tree that day when they were read the Emancipation Proclamation. Uh, in western Brazoria County, there in Old Ocean, where the ConocoPhillips plant is now, uh, there were two bodark trees under in out in front of the plantation house there that I believe is the Sweeney plantation, and there were maybe as many as 10,000 people, enslaved people, formerly enslaved people that from Western Matagorda and Eastern Brazoria who gathered there and heard the Freedmen's Bureau agent, read the Emancipation Proclamation from underneath those trees. And ConocoPhillips tore down those trees in 2007. They're no longer there. They very few people understood their, and I got that from satellite images watching the evolution of that region. Right, they tore them down, and there's freedom trees like that, or I mean they're crucial.
now that Freedom Tree is at the Brazoria Heritage Foundation.
Oh,
So
okay.
they delivered it actually to my historic site in Hitchcock, and artist Earl Jones carved it, and he turned the tree upside down with the roots spanning out, and then he carved the imagery from creation through 1865 of the soldier standing underneath the tree. So that freedom tree has been saved. But to your point, they were about to just tear it down, and locals brought to their attention that is the freedom tree. You need to do something with it. So they contracted with Earl, and it was saved and carved. And the Freedom Tree in Missouri City, I believe Dinah has a slide where she took a screenshot in the Galveston newspaper we had recently here, this publication on Juneteenth. And there's a story about that tree written by Dr. Odewale, Alicia Odewale, that is part of the Black Heritage Tree Project. So I think she's bringing it up now. And a living witness of Juneteenth. That's the Freedom Tree right there.
There.
And that's just a shameless plug here. My Juneteenth documentary, Juneteenth, the Galveston Story, just coincidental that the ad for the documentary is at the bottom of that page when they ran it. So I don't
That's
have a book, but I have a
no,
documentary.
that's absolutely fantastic. I look forward to the documentary. And or is it out? It's out.
Yeah, I can send you a private link
Oh,
where you can see it.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. That'll
It's
be
been
great.
out 5 years, and we're working on a second
Okay.
documentary now. That's
Okay.
why I interviewed Miss Carrie Thomas, Juneteenth in the Country. This is Juneteenth, the Galveston story. We completed it 1 month before Juneteenth became a national holiday.
Yeah,
But that living witness tree, you could
yeah.
talk about it more there.
Oh, it's absolutely very important. And the thing is that so much of history has been erased from down there in particular. Of all of the cabins and brick residences and wooden residences that belong to enslaved people and freed people, to my knowledge, there are two left standing in all four of those counties, and one in East Columbia, the Waddy Sweeney cabin that they rescued from the Sweeney plantation, and then there is one at Egypt in Wharton County. And we think about the people think about the plantation houses, and they never think about. I mean, those things were torn down. The quarters were torn down, paved over. I'm ecstatic to hear that they saved that freedom tree. That is absolutely fantastic. I did not know that, and that is wonderful. But even in pulling it up, you do lose a certain sense of place in terms of where this happened, right? And so that
Oh,
that
absolutely.
that is unfortunate, but I'm glad the tree is still there. And you know, yeah, I just I
Well,
wish
I
that.
have a question
Sorry.
for y'all. Sorry, my signal's a little off, but
Oh, no.
I kind of interject in awkward parts. Um, this is to both of you, because we've y'all have used this word misconception, and so like what are the most persistent misconceptions people hold about Reconstruction, and how do those misconceptions shape how we misunderstand Juneteenth today?
I think that the one of the biggest misconceptions is that a lot of Americans, especially white Americans, are still under the impression that Reconstruction was somehow a negative period in the history of the country or of the South. They have the old Dunning School interpretation that predates Eric Foner's Reconstruction and the work of scholars and activists beginning in the 1960s, and nothing could be further from the truth. These Reconstruction governments were not corrupt. They were, in fact, less corrupt than other contemporary governments in the Midwest or the Northeast. They, there was no trampling on the rights of white Texans. That's garbage. If they had engaged in rebellion, in treason against the United States Constitution, did they have to give up the right to vote for a few years? Sure. Did they have to give up their property? No, they did not. Their land was still theirs. There was no, field Sherman's Field Order number 15. It was repealed by Andrew Johnson, and so there's this misconception, I think, that it was a negative period when in fact it is maybe one of the most inspiring, uplifting periods. Of course, until you get to the point where it was overthrown with violence, right? At Colfax in Louisiana, or at in Wilmington in 1898, and so it did have a very tragic ending.
Yeah, and
Uh,
I would add to that this idea that enslaved people were looking for something for nothing or looking to be taken care of. Even in General Order number 3, it
yeah,
states that they would not be supported in idleness. Idleness, when have they ever been idle? I mean, they had been working their entire
yeah,
time here, and then all they wanted was a little space to have a home and start farming their own land. And they really wanted to be separated from these individuals in the sense of these freedom colonies that were formed, and they were living independently. And another thing is, many people don't realize how many black elected officials were in office during Reconstruction. So a lot of times when, say, in Fort Bend County, when the sheriff was elected, of course it was known about the black sheriff before, but I mean it took over 100 years before another black sheriff was elected. That is same thing with senators and state reps. That these things. Matter of fact, Matthew Gaines in 1871 gives an immigration speech, and in it he says, the black children and white children play well together. Let's allow them to go to school together and see what the future will hold. The past is behind us. Like the old days are gone. Let's move forward. And we all know, because of the Compromise of 1877 and the Jim Crow South, they did not choose to move forward. And he pointed out to them, you're bringing in all of these immigrants. You won't give us land here, but you're bringing in immigrants. You're giving them land. We see you're trying to dilute our vote. I mean, he's not using this terminology. This is my terminology today. But he's pointing out you're sending agents to recruit people from other countries, but you're not sending people into Africa to bring in Africans. You brought us here illegally, but now you won't bring us here to get our numbers up. And we see what's going to happen. Our numbers are going to be low, and you're going to continue this. And that's what happened. But they were very active in self-sufficient, independent communities. They especially when you think about these counties that were so heavily populated. Wharton County was over 80% black, 80%. So when you start allowing black men to vote, that's going to skew the numbers, and they knew that. So that's why they fought so hard against that. So with Reconstruction, it's just so many lies have been told about. This was the first attempt of shared power uh, with regards to a democracy that would have been open to more voices and more representation. And that's why it hurts me so now when I see voter turnout at 10% or less, that so many people sacrifice so much to have a voice. And now many individuals are not engaged in participating. So,
Yeah, it was the intentional erasure of Black history, the intentional suppression of it, the intentional covering up of it. And when anything did come up, then they found a way to spin it in a negative light during the Jim Crow era. And Reconstruction was the first chance this country got to attempt a true multiracial democracy. And until the Voting Rights Act of 1965. And now the Voting Rights Act of 1965 is dead. The Supreme Court has killed it. And they make no secret about it. There's a rush right now to gerrymander every black representative in the South out of their districts. It's utter madness.
is history repeating itself?
That's right, because human nature doesn't change, and so history strongly rhymes, and it does repeat itself in some instances. But no, it's that's why it's such a disheartening moment to live in. But you only lose if you quit. As long as we don't quit, we don't lose. And I'm not planning on quitting anytime soon.
Well, when you can get an Aggie and Longhorn together in agreement, man, I say the world is a better place. So
Absolutely. Well,
we are
and
working together.
both of our universities are facing the same problems right now. The problems emanating from the state government, from the federal government, and suppressing accurate history, suppressing a discussion of Black history at all. At the place where I work, and I'm not going to name it, they won't let us have a Juneteenth celebration because it could violate Texas's anti-DEI law. That's our
And one of the things that I've been trying to work on is to get individuals to see that this is our Texas history. This is
That's right.
not DEI. This is
No,
not some kind of diversity issue.
no,
This is our Texas history.
no. Yeah, and
Yeah.
I can talk about Juneteenth in forums like
Sorry
this.
to interject.
Oh, no, go ahead.
Yeah. I want to take y'all. I love where this is going, and I want to add another dimension to it. What does it mean to think about Juneteenth and Reconstruction, not just as American history, but as stories that belong to a global conversation about freedom, justice, and the African diaspora?
Oh, I'm sorry, my laptop was dying, so I had to plug it in. But yeah, it is definitely world history. When we think about people, forced migration coming from around the world, our connection is all around the world, and this history is connected to world history, and it needs to be talked about. I had an opportunity to visit South America and also to Accra, Ghana, building relationships with individuals in those countries and on those continents. 55% of the transatlantic slave trade went into South America. 35% into the Caribbean islands, and 6% into what we call the continental US. So this world history is is all connected, and the sooner we could get people to understand we are human beings floating on a rock we call Earth in an area we call space, hopefully things could be better. But unfortunately, the greed of some individuals to take, take, take doesn't allow for the sun. The planet has enough resources to support life all around the world. It's just that unfortunately, we have people that fear losing control of the resources and assets and that are addicted to power that causes us to constantly be at war as human beings. Hopefully at some point there'll be a generation that will come along and realize that we as human beings can share this space. So we have to make a world connection because we're no longer isolated with the connectivity of the world. Borders are being erased. We are interdependent on each other for our survival, and we'll either survive together or we'll all perish together.
That's absolutely right. I couldn't put it any better myself. I mean, and again, this idea that whiteness is a race, it's not. It's an artificial social construct, that was created for solidarity among European immigrants against what they called the other, right, in order to prevent multiracial class warfare. And so, yeah, they've always tried to divide us, but it's not each other we should be looking at. It's the people with the money. They're the ones who are saying, "Hey, look at each other, so we don't look at them." And so, but I mean, that's a lot of the foundation of this country. And you go to Europe and it's very different. They have very much more class consciousness than Americans seem to exhibit. In America, I think we have this attitude that we're either haves or about to haves, right? One lucky break here, or just win the lottery, or whatever. Well, of course, that's garbage. And but people have been sold on this idea for so long, and sold on this idea that we have to be antagonistic to each other because somehow increasing freedom and equality, somehow it's a limited asset. It's not pie. It's not limited. Like other people have more freedom. I don't have less freedom. It's just we all have more freedom, and it benefits all of us. And it's just it.
Well, I'm asking about the global connection because I don't think many people realize how globally connected Texas was at that time. I think that there's just a gap in knowledge. I mean, obviously, with your book, John, and the work that Sam does, we're starting to get a clearer picture, and and more historians that are coming along to shed to shed light on these histories. But I don't think people realize how globally connected that specific port was at the time, and why this makes a case for it's actually world history. You know.
No, without the cotton coming out of Galveston, the Republic of Texas never would have gained diplomatic recognition from Great Britain. They're and cotton produced by enslaved people, and it's very much. I mean, Galveston is very much a global port. It's very much a world port, and very connected, and always has been to international commerce, and has always attracted a lot of a big diverse population, very much like Houston. But absolutely, I mean, it has everything to do with the expansion of the United States, the ambitions of the British Empire, the ambitions of the Spanish Empire. I mean, at the time, and even now, with oil, right? And So Texas is a crossroads, and always has been a crossroads geographically and globally. And so, you know,
And Galveston, a city of 50,000, has 8 million visitors a year.
that's right.
Still to
Yeah.
this day, 8 million visitors for an island of 50,000. It is an astronomical number and
Hmm.
growing. And, it's a challenge with the locals here of the tourists, but it's still a global city. And
Absolutely.
it is important uh, not only for the history, but for the future.
Yep. Absolutely.
Yes. And Sam, where can people look up Juneteenth activities in Galveston?
On the Visit Galveston website, the Park Board of Trustees has a website that they could visit. I don't have it in front of me right now. Maybe someone could look at it and put it in the chat, put it in it, but visit Galveston. But Galveston has 2 to 3 weeks of Juneteenth activities. So if you just Google Galveston and Juneteenth, that'll come up. Last year, we had over 600 million dollars in earned media. I think it was 650 related to Juneteenth. President Biden came to visit last year, so that was an uptick in the media coverage. But just think about that, over a $500 million in earned media that would not have happened if not for the story of Juneteenth. People want to know where this story began, and people want to
Mhm.
know not only about Galveston, but how this affected the entire country. There are many emancipation days all over the country, whether that be January 1st, related to Emancipation Proclamation, May 20th in Florida, August 8th in Kentucky. There was when the soldiers reached different areas. That's when the news of freedom came. But now that we have this platform, we can connect Cinco de Mayo, which is important to the Union victory during the Civil War, May 5th, 1862, Juneteenth, June 19th, 1865, and the 4th of July should be a part of this conversation. All of those dates help to expand the story of this freedom journey that we continue today.
Absolutely. And, the
Definitely.
Juneteenth should be understood in the context of the 4th of July, just like Frederick Douglass laid it out.
Hmm. Definitely a theme for a future webinar. But John, tell us where people can buy your book.
So my book was published by Texas A&M University Press,
Woo!
and they can purchase it through the press website. They can purchase it through Amazon, anywhere that books are sold. As far as I've seen, quite a few outlets, and so they can certainly purchase it that way. There's an ebook version, so yeah, and
Can
again,
you give us the full title again?
yeah, it is. No, here we go. Here, I'll just hold it up here. There you go. Shameless self promotion here.
No, it's okay. I think people are going to want to read it. Well, John, Sam, on behalf of the Monuments Toolkit and World Heritage USA, and on behalf of everyone who joined us today, thank you. This conversation is exactly why we do the work that we do. Sam, I think you've quoted Frederick Douglass before that those who want crops without plowing the ground want rain without thunder. And John, I think you've spent your career excavating a founding that America tried to bury. And so on this Juneteenth, you both have given us that thunder. So thank you so much
And thank you. I did
to
put in the
both of you
chat my
for sharing.
website, truthstrong.org. I did put that
Yes,
in the chat so
Okay.
people can find me at truthstrong.org.
Well, Sam, I'm going to be in Hempstead this weekend,
thank you.
so maybe I can drop. If you
All
want to
right,
have lunch or something.
we will connect. I have 7
Absolutely.
events over the next
I,
three
I
days, so I'll be busy, but we will connect.
I very much enjoyed this conversation with you.
Yes, sir.
Thank you. To our audience, the recording of this webinar will be shared via our mailing list. You can find more about both of our speakers through the links in the chat and through the post that we um, put out later announcing the webinar recording availability. Thank you for joining us. Happy Juneteenth, everyone. Goodbye.
Happy Juneteenth.
Happy Juneteenth.